All right, Sakid. I think we can go ahead and get started. It's Monday morning. I'm guessing everybody's at home checking emails after the weekend.
Yeah, that's okay.
So, for you, those of you guys that are on, thank you for joining us this morning on Monday. I know Mondays are busy. Um, I'm here with Sakid Ahmed from Cambium Networks, and he's going to be introducing us to Cambium Networks wireless technology and talking about how it works with NX. So,
Super.
Sakid, you want to take
Yeah.
over?
Thanks, Tony.
Oh,
Good
oh, oh, oh,
morning.
sorry. One more thing. Sorry, I
Sure,
forgot
sure.
one. For those of you guys that are on right now, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the question and answer section of your Zoom or in chat, and we'll get to your questions as we go along. I'll be interrupting Sakid every once in a while to ask him a question if it's relevant, and then we got a Q&A session at the end as well, where you guys can ask additional questions. So back over to you,
Okay.
Sakid.
All right. Thank you. So again, good morning and good afternoon, good evening if there's people from other time zones. So thank you for this opportunity to Network Optics and Tony specifically to do this webinar. I wanted to go through this webinar today and introduce the attendees to Cambium Networks first and foremost, and then a little bit about actually quite a bit about the cnVision product line, which has everything to do with a wireless connectivity solution for video surveillance. In a nutshell, it's basically anything and any place where you are not, deploying fiber or digging up the ground, and you need something that's purpose-built and highly reliable wireless solution designed from the ground up. Then that's what the cnVision from Cambium Networks is all about. Moving on to my next slide. We are a leading provider of wireless solutions. We spun out of Motorola Solutions in 2011, probably quite well known back in the day and even today on a platform called Canopy, which is deployed in about 150 different countries. We target mostly the internet service provider customer base. So imagine anywhere outside of the urban dense areas where internet connectivity is not available or fast internet. A lot of entrepreneur wireless service providers use our product to provide that connectivity, which fundamentally drives the need for creating something very reliable. And when I say reliable, it's not just about hardware reliability, it's the software, it's the protocol that we use to ensure that we can deal with interference and have a robust connection. All that translates to a solution that is quite unique and important for mission critical video. As video is a constant feed in the uplink, our solution lends itself well for video surveillance. We are headquartered here in the US in Chicago area and have R&D centers across the world, and that's kind of the summary. So today our products are deployed. And this is sort of the solution that we have today catered towards the service provider market that happens to be used in some video solution environments. This is, as you can see, in major metropolitan areas. What you see in the pictures are essentially the dish or radio product that connects to the same switch as the video camera and wirelessly transports that video feed across the wireless link. Just to note that what you see in the picture here and what I'm about to talk about is a little bit different. The solutions today that we have are geared towards, let's say, folks that are very wireless savvy, and they are willing to spend an extra amount of time designing a link and understanding the complexity of RF. And really the wireless portion and the camera portion of the link really sits parallel to each other, and there really isn't any integration. What we have done is, sorry, I'll move ahead in a second. What we've done is taken some of the under the hood, the feature set, the predictability, and the protocol, and taken that and created a solution called cnVision. And the idea behind cnVision is that we deliver the same reliability and predictability, but we've done some integration, make it super easy to use, make the RF radio frequency planning simple, and integrated it with things like, works with NX, NX Witness, as well as any platform that supports NX Witness video management system. Along with that, some integration with OnVIF and some planning tools. All of that brings this sophisticated wireless into the world of CCTV in a much more integrated fashion. And I'll go ahead and give you guys a demo and show you a bit about that.
Just curious though, I mean, like what's the level of demand for wireless for video today versus what it was like 10 years ago?
Right, that's a good question, Tony. 10 years ago, I would say that there were folks, integrators that were dabbling in Wi-Fi, like picking up a standard Wi-Fi access point and trying to do video feed on that. And to some extent, Wi-Fi, to a great extent, Wi-Fi is just not suited for this. And I have a slide coming up. So that kind of put a damper on it. But then as time progressed, people are starting to jump on wireless more often than not. So I would say the market is actually growing and there's more opportunities. And if you think about it, with population density and cities needing more video coverage or video surveillance coverage, the fiber or digging up the parking lot or crossing the street is just not viable. So wireless is starting to make a good comeback in that space, and it's certainly growing.
All right, thanks.
And that actually leads to the natural question, which I attempt to answer here in this slide, is that, I mean, I'm a wireless guy, but at the end of the day, I would rather have a wire to my house, and I do actually. But the reality is that deploying fiber, digging up trenches, working with permits and all that, it is not a easy task. Therefore, wireless is a good alternative and a good complement to some extent to putting up that camera. And I always say this to camera vendors often too, Tony, is that, if I sell 50 cameras to a school district, for example, the school district is able to go deploy 30 of those 50 cameras very quickly because they have links already available. But the remaining 20 cameras takes another 4 months to deploy. Well, if wireless was positioned with the school district and they were able to deploy all 50 cameras really quickly and start reaping the benefits, there is a scenario where they may go and say, you know what, I have more needs for cameras, and if I can install them this quickly and avoid all the overhead and the cost of installation, I'd rather do this wirelessly and buy more cameras. So I think for an integrator, for a video camera vendor, there is a upside to positioning wireless because it just gets the job done faster and cheaper. So at the end of the day, it's more projects, more money on the project, as well as the potentially selling more equipment.
So you mentioned on the slide that the unlicensed spectrum becomes a breeze. I mean, what frequency are you guys running at?
5 gigahertz.
Oh, 5 gigahertz. So it is Wi-Fi.
It is Wi-Fi frequency. Right. But the good news about that is that we run a proprietary protocol, and I'll good lead into the next slide.
Yeah.
Tony, you must have seen these slides before somewhere. But this is a table that kind of gives you an idea why we are talking about the uniqueness of our solution. Is that Wi-Fi is a great solution. We live and breathe it. But it is a contention-based protocol, which means it's a listen before talk, and it can become unpredictable. You have distance limitations. When you have interference, you do channel switching only to sit on somebody else's channel, the Starbucks Wi-Fi that's blasting away. All of that is resolved and with this proprietary solution where we have this deterministic protocol. We don't do listen before talk. We just send what we need to send. So that creates a deterministic behavior. So your camera feed is not interrupted. Range is not an issue. You see in the third row, customized rate adapt, which has to do with the ability to go up and down in your modulations based on the link quality. When that's done automatically, you're not just simply jumping on another channel only to come back, you're adapting. So minimizing frame loss becomes a key attribute to that. Quality of service, bandwidth allocation, as well as how many cameras you support, the ruggedization, all of that is in the top part of this slide. But last but not least, the two other things that we're kind of excited about, and obviously the bottom one is the key reason we're having this webinar, is that we have this OnVIF client on the cameras that allows you to have a additional troubleshooting data point. And then last but not least, doing this VMS integration, presenting the wireless products in the same VMS that you would typically see your cameras. And the demo and the video feed, the video demo will speak to that in a second. A little bit on the portfolio, because everybody's probably wondering, what the heck is this? What do I touch and feel? You really have 5 different hardware SKUs. You have a couple of SKUs here on the left side in what we call the hub. Think of the hub as the access point, the base station that's doing the talking and the listening, and the clients being the guys that are attached to a switch with a camera associated to it. The very far right, you see these antennas that goes along with the first hub model, which is the FlexR, representing a flexible solution and being able to create different type of beam widths down the street side or a parking lot where you don't care about specific directions. You put a hub 360, giving you a wider coverage. So you just put it up against the wall, and anything within 120-degree front field, you put up a client. Each client represents different gain. Gain in this case is essentially the antenna's ability to transmit, and a micro mini Maxar gives you different ranges. Each case, you get form factor that's smaller, a little bigger, a few different attributes, but fundamentally that's what they are serving the purpose.
What's the difference in the range between the mini and the max?
Yep, I'm going to give you that in 1 second. Just to walk you through a little bit of the deployment example, on a FlexR, you attach an antenna, you get a coverage, and you add the cameras, essentially what I talked about. This is a 60-degree horn antenna from a third-party vendor. If you went with something wider and you use a 90/120 degree, you get a bigger coverage, relatively simple to follow. Or in a 360 coverage, you're able to get multiple devices along the way. The 2 hub devices can also be, 2 client devices can also be configured as a hub. Kind of gives you the same SKU that you can use both to be the transmitter, listener, as well as the client device, as you can see in this picture. Last but not least, to answer your question, a micro device goes up to about a mile in distance. We can certainly do more than that, but we are recommending up to a mile. The idea behind here is that typical deployments are not going to be that long, but it's all about link budget. Within a mile, this should be great to use if you want to go a little bit more or have a bit more oomph in your link budget. You go up to a mile with 4 miles with the mini. You want to go long distance, or just say, you know what, I want the maximum possible power possible. I don't want to take chances. You can go with the Maxar and shoot about 8 miles.
Do you need line of sight on these, or is it like
not necessarily? Yeah, not necessarily, right? You can have trees, for example. You can have foliage. It really is about us, our ability to speak loud, right? When you're trying to talk over a crowd or talk across a room door that's closed, you yell louder. So it just, radio frequency is very similar in this case. If you have a giant building with multiple stories right in the middle of it, that's going to attenuate the signal significantly. In that case, we call that a hardcore non-line of sight. But a non-line of sight can also be where you have a bunch of trees and you can blast through those trees and still get a decent enough signal on the other side. So I would answer that it's a case-by-case situation. In some cases, you can shoot around the buildings or bounce off of buildings. Other cases, you can shoot through it. In other cases, you are really out of luck because it is just a massive building in front of you and you can't get through it.
Like what are the things that are like the most obstructive to like a signal like this?
Right. In 5 gigahertz, typically it will be construction. It will be buildings and any solid surfaces. The characteristics don't change. So to give you an example where you may be coming from is that you hear about 60 gigahertz, which is a very high frequency millimeter wave. That's really high throughput, but very short distance. There, rain causes problems, right? Moisture in the air causes massive problems. 5 gigahertz is immune to that, right? You don't see a lot of variation from a weather, hardly any. So really, it boils down to hardware.
2.4 is also water, right?
Yeah, but 2.4 on the other hand is lower in the frequency, so it has better propagation. It will actually go further, and it will have better characteristics. The tough thing about 2.4, it's is limited how much spectrum you have. You only have like 80 megahertz or 100 megahertz in the US, but everything is on 2.4. So every Wi-Fi device out there, first and foremost, will support 2.4. I was just funny thing, but I was playing around with my Alexa Fire Sticks at home and all the TVs and trying to make sense out of all the Wi-Fi in my house. And needless to say, like every Alexa device at $30 is really only supports 2.4. So next thing you know, I got 6 2.4 devices in my house.
Right.
So that tends to be the norm in the industry.
So you'd say line of sight is when you're setting up one of these systems, line of sight is ideal, but not necessary.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to describe it. Correct.
All right.
All right. So moving on to a little bit of a demo. I'm not gonna make everybody sit through. I'll just kind of speak through it. This is a user interface of a cnVision hub that we're logging into. I'll pause for a second. You have a dashboard here with the download speed, upload speed at any given time. Obviously, you have a menu here, quick start, configuration monitor, and a VMS integration, which I will come to in a few minutes. Right here in where I hope everybody can see my mouse, it says cnVision detected cameras. This is where the ONVIF discovery protocol comes into play, where the hub is actually picking up information from, in this case, a Hikvision camera, and showing information through the protocol. What the next part that's happening is I'm actually clicking on the video stream button and logging into the camera virtually through this hub, through the credentials, submitting it. You'll see some ... as it's discovering the camera. What ends up happening here is we're actually retapping or replaying the video stream right from the camera and popping it up in a pop-up in the hub. So the value here is simply this, in our minds. The ability to do this, and we do this with just about every camera that supports ONVIF, gives you another point of troubleshooting. The scenario that I often describe is that if you happen to have a bunch of cameras in a NOC, Network Operations Center, with a VMS big tile of camera feeds, coming to work one morning and you suddenly see a couple of feeds that are out. Your first instinct is to check that the camera's responding to a ping, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say everything is fine, and you're looking to maybe send somebody out to look at the hardware. Well, being able to log into the client or the hub, essentially your backhaul, and ensuring that the feed that the camera is seeing, everything is fine up to that point, tells you that your installation is still okay. It's still pointing in the right direction. It's still giving the right feed. Maybe it's something as simple as on the VMS configuration side, maybe a wrong password was typed or something happened where the feed disappeared. So the idea is to give you another data point. And this may come into play even in cases where maybe the VMS feed is not accessible because of law enforcement related issues and whatnot, but you just need a quick data point to check the feed locally. And this gives you that data ability without even getting into the camera. So
the ONVIF camera you're showing right now, it says detected cameras. I assume you guys do auto discovery of those devices?
Yes, all this is auto discovery.
So if there's a compatible device on the network, it'll show up as one of the detected cameras.
That's correct. That's correct. You also see a little button here that says reboot camera. Again, right from the hub and the client, you're able to click reboot and reboot the camera. And now we will move to the next part of it. This here is, let me just kind of, this slide here kind of actually shows your NX Witness a bit more, a busier slide, but I'll kind of give an idea of the main integration. First and foremost, as you can see, on the right-hand side, you have these events. These events are where we are able to send a alarm or an event type that says, hey, the client has deregistered or registered. So imagine in a wireless system, needless to say, wireless is easy, cheap, faster to deploy, but you may have events happen, right? Maybe somebody did decide to put up a big obstruction and the link dropped. Well, now the integration with NX Witness in this case allows you to see those events right from the same window that you would be looking for camera related information. So this is really the key of the integration, that we are now sending alarms and stats to an NX Witness platform similar to a camera. From a wireless backhaul perspective, I've not seen any other vendors or any other solutions that have this type of integration. The second thing is,
sorry, just to clarify real fast. So the hubs that you're showing here, maybe you were just about to talk about it. Those two things you were just showing, those are web-based interfaces coming from the individual devices from cnVision.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
So,
and then
this tile is
yes. So I was going to ask, the events that are coming in, are those coming from those devices?
Yes.
Okay, so the create event API, or what we call generic event call, that's generating these events, is coming from individual devices on the network.
Correct.
Do you need to program those events, or are they automatic?
We are doing those. No, you don't have to program anything on your end. We are providing those events.
So it's built-in functionality right now.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
These are all built-in functionality, and we're able to modify, tweak, rename them any way we want to, add more events. What we've fundamentally done is created an agent of sorts that is gathering this event from the hub and the client and pushing it to the supported VMS platform. And the dynamic web page that you called out appropriately is essentially these tiles. And again, this is dynamic in the sense that here, this information is also being pushed right to your NX Witness via a web page update.
And this, I mean, you keep mentioning NX Witness, but this works the same with any powered by NX product.
That's correct.
So Hanwha Wave, VW Spectrum, all of our partners that out there that are built off of the Meta platform, basically the way this is working, and the demo you're showing here with NX Witness is going to work the same way in those products.
Yes, thanks for highlighting that. And we actually have had demos with Hanwha Wave multiple times, but yes, this will work with any one of your supported platforms. That's correct.
Cool.
All right, moving on to a slightly different view of things, just to get an idea. This is what a typical scenario would look like. You'll have a client here, which will go into a PoE switch, our PoE brick, data port to data port. Now these cameras are connected to the same switch, assuming this is an EMA enclosure. Wirelessly, we'll send all this video feed over to a hub, which also is connected to a switch, which assuming connects up to the cloud. And this is the management of all the cameras as well as the feeds. So this is just a view of how the deployment and the end-to-end picture would look like. And moving ahead, this actually ends up being a little bit of the demo where we have done this with the VMS integration. As we mentioned, you have a VMS integration, which is enabled. You choose to a drop-down menu, the VMS, put in the credentials, IP address, etc. And I will help move the video up a little faster. You can also generate the link. This is the dynamic link we're generating. The user here is copying and pasting, and they're moving over to an NX Witness, launching the web page, adding a new page here, and let's go ahead and show that page. This is populating the information, the speeds, alongside a camera tile. And on the right-hand side, the events and alarms, we're actually triggering a manual one by going into Monitor Wireless, where you see the registered clients, and he's going to actually hit the deregister button here. He's showing going into the client itself. I hope my narrative is working alongside this.
Yeah.
Doing it, timing it just right, hopefully. And in the client side, he's also showing the VMS integration part. And let's move ahead a little bit faster.
So in the quick question real fast, in the drop down there, you've got the NX Witness VMS. I guess there's plans to add the additional partners.
Yeah, so Hanwha's in there today.
Okay.
And you're absolutely right, Tony. Following this webinar discussion with you guys, we're going to go ahead and add the remaining vendors that you support, your partners. There's no reason we can do that. It's actually quite easy to do.
That was my question.
So this is similar to, this is basically the setup we're showing. And this is the same picture I showed in the static slide. And let's just move ahead a little faster. And this is where we have generated the client event, custom event, communication lost. We're forcing the link to drop, and that generates the corresponding event in this case. Okay, I will go ahead and move to the next slide. which is that's just an idea of where we are selling today. We're increasing our distribution presence, but there's a few players in North America here, a few others in Europe and Africa, but we are expanding the where to buy options. And with that, we can switch to a bit more Q&A, but Tony, I think you did a great job moderating and asking some pretty critical questions, but curious to see if our audience has any other questions that I can address, talk to.
Yeah, there's a question from Alexis Zenios. This is what would be the typical range for a Hub 360 and a client micro versus a client max?
Very, that's a good question. So a Hub 360, typically we'll always say it's about a mile range. In fact, a little less than that. The reason is that while you can put a high power client, your communication is bidirectional. So you'll end up with an uneven link budget. So your one side will be screaming louder, but the Hub 360 won't be screaming as loud. So you have to make sure that you take that into consideration. So for a Hub 360, regardless of any client that you use, our strongest recommendation is to stay within, let's say, a kilometer or so range in the Hub 360 model. I don't have this in the presentation, but if you wanted to see it, if you go to www.cambiumnetworks.com/cnVision, scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll see a case study, which we did in Brazil with a Formula One Grand Prix event, where a Hub 360 was used with 7 mini clients and Dawa cameras. And there, the range was about 600, 700 feet from the Hub 360, and they used the cameras and the wireless links to provide coverage from VIP areas, ticketing booth areas, and a little bit of the race coverage as well. So that was a pretty exciting case study for us. I should also highlight that something I didn't capture here, the price range of these products, Tony and audience, is in the $199 to $329 range, which is per device. So if you wanted to create a nice, robust, 1 mile link, you could do it for as little as $400 list price.
And then what's the number of cameras that a single device could support?
Right. So that is a function 100% of the camera throughput requirements. But we will do in an 80 megahertz channel about 600 megabits per second. So in 600 megabits per second, I would advise that you create some extra budget and et cetera and plan that.
So probably like 1080p at 3 megs, you're talking about like 150 of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going off a little bit off the agenda, Tony, but I'm showing something else
no worries.
on my screen that's not in the PowerPoint. But this is a cnVision companion tool that we are releasing here very shortly. You'll see this idea of a discovery tool and a planning tool. And if you go to the planning tool, you have added a hub. In the hub, you'll add names and things like that. You can choose interference levels based on where you are. Device lat long you put in there, and you can go ahead and add a client. And the reason I'm showing this demo is when you go to the client and you edit the client, you can add a camera under the client. And when you add the camera under the client, you can choose your resolution, your compression, and frames per second. And once you do that, I will actually show you the available capacity that the RF link has based on some background calculation and what the camera needs. So this will kind of answer that question. You said, well, how many cameras can I put under a client? You can use this tool to do this. It's a free tool. It'll be available on our website in a very short time, and you can download it. And we're going to be expanding on this. We're going to add more and more functionality to this.
So it's kind of like our system calculator tool where you go in and plan the number of the amount of storage you're going to need.
Exactly. So you're
going to need.
Exactly. So you have the system calculator for storage. You have other vendors that provide their own camera calculator, similar to what you suggested. But this is where we're attempting to bring the wireless calculation into the mix. That's probably the best way to describe this.
Could you go back to the add a camera dialog?
Yep. Add a camera. Okay.
So underneath the resolutions there, it goes all the way up to, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
8K.
Yeah. So we went pretty high on that front. Different quality levels on the compressions. And of course,
and then your engagement model, you showed the distributors that you guys work with.
Yes. So we are distributor-led, which means our products are sold through somebody like Jenny who carries Hanwha. ScanSource, we're working on it, should be on board very soon, and some international folks, correct? So it's distribution-led.
Yeah. Allnet is actually one of our partners in Germany as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Allnet's big in this area. So Allnet Italy, Allnet Germany is starting to carry our product.
So you guys are primarily focused on European and North American markets right now?
Syscom is Mexico. South America, there's a few players that have come on board. We're working with Annixter actually in Brazil and WDC and a few others. There's some of our existing partners are interested, but we are looking to recruit additional players in South America. Duxbury in South Africa does a lot of access. We'd like to expand more in Africa, and needless to say, Asia Pacific is just a work in progress. So if there's anybody here on the call, including yourself, Tony, that you have ideas on partners that would be willing to try, or happy to talk about that.
Yeah, the just like a usage scenario. So let's say I had I've got a campus project, right? And I've got let's say 10 cameras that are kind of out in a parking lot somewhere. Right. I don't really want to dig up the parking lot because I just took over this building for somebody else. Right. I mean, rough estimate, you were saying about what, $400 per device. So in a 10 camera kind of setup, I mean, I'm just curious about the ROI on this. So like if I'm thinking about running 10 cables out to this parking lot and digging up everything, it's probably going to cost me 20 grand maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So like what's the comparative to like the wireless solution? Same
right.
situation.
So good question, and probably good input for us to add that as an ROI calculator, because it would be a beautiful way to summarize this. But yes, so 10 camera installation. Let's hypothetically say that all 10 cameras can be fed by one hub, meaning you're within the line of sight or within the field of view. So that's one hub. Let's go with the FlexR, higher priced one, or the 360. Long story short, that's 10 clients at about $200 a piece, right? $2,000, and then one hub at $300. So $25, $2,500 or less. You're good to
versus digging all the cable and digging up all the trenches and doing all the cable and paying everybody to do it, right?
Exactly. And then I'll say this too, that a system integrator, right? They make their money at the end of the day. The labor cost of installing cameras, the time, there's margin in that, right? The price of the camera, price of VMS licenses, prices of connectivity is, in my opinion, when I look at things, it's actually not one of the bigger costs of a deployment. The good news here is that an integrator could still do the same deployment, potentially come more competitive, yet still make some good money on the installation. There's a trick here, I guess, right? At the end of the day, a lot of people can compare cabling costs and installation costs. Well, this guy told me to dig up 20 feet, it's going to cost me this. Why are you telling me higher? With wireless, you can say, well, this is purpose-built wireless. I still need to do some planning, et cetera, et cetera. There's money to be made, right? There's margins. You can be competitive and still make some money. If you understand where I'm going with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So like for larger projects though, let's say that somebody's got like a city size project, or they're doing like a K through 12, like a set of schools around I mean, do you guys work pretty closely with integrators when they're starting to put together those solutions?
Absolutely. So right now I'll tell you this. So there's two things that I want to make sure it's well understood. So number one, support and contact, right? You are going to be able to talk to us, even for pre-sales planning. We did a project for somebody on the Hudson River, a big complex. It hasn't gone commercial yet, but it was, at the end of the day, like 50 different cameras, and required some RF planning. So we're more than happy to engage with an integrator directly in doing that initial planning. And then once the planning is done, we have 24/7 support where you are able to call somebody and talk to somebody if you have an issue. So there's going to be a lot tighter connection on both pre-sales training, planning, as well as post-sales. The second,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the second quick point is that there's a 3-year warranty on all of our hardware. So no questions asked for 3 years. We will do warranty replacements and things like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. The follow-up to that was like, how often do these devices, what's the average like life of these devices?
These will go, 30-year is our calculated MTBF, right?
Okay.
Mean time between failures. The products have been, I'll give you some examples, right? Some of this hardware sits in Siberia, I forget the name of the city, but it's one of the coldest regions, right? Because there's like built-in heaters in them. During cold start, where it gets really cold, let's say in northern Minnesota, we have products deployed there surviving. And then down in the Middle East in hot temperatures. So minus 30 to plus 55 is what we put in the spec, but we actually see things go beyond that. So they're very well designed from a hardware perspective and reliability and ruggedization.
All right. Do you guys out there, do you guys have any questions? Don't see any coming in. I'm guessing Sakid is answering all our questions before we ask them, like it's happening to me.
Thanks to you.
I'm trying to think. Is there anything else? I mean, what's a general trend right now in wireless in terms of technologies? Are more people moving over to the 5 gigahertz range versus the 2.4 and the rest of the stuff, or is it? I mean, do you see any kind of upcoming trends that these guys should be aware of?
Yeah. No, that's a good question actually, and this is probably a few second conversation. So you see in the wireless industry, you're obviously hearing the buzz around 5G, right? 5G that's going to revolutionize not just you and my experience with cell phones, but it's going to change the space for IoT devices and things like that. There are people out there using cameras and feeding them with mobile cellular MiFi type devices, right?
Yep.
Which has this recurring cost, right? You're paying a monthly subscription to AT&T Verizon. On a side note, this is interesting because right through this COVID-19, one of the things we started to see is in your education systems, some companies are putting out school buses with mobile hotspots, Wi-Fi, right, for students to e-learning. And they're all paying the cellular company. So on that front, you'll see the 5G stuff evolve, but what you're seeing also is in the Wi-Fi arena, on that side of the house and connectivity, there is FCC's talking about 6 gigahertz, which means it's the Wi-Fi 6 extended from 5 gig, 6 gig all the way to 7 gig, a whole nother 1,000 gigahertz of spectrum becoming available in North America. And ETSI, which is the European body for certification, will follow that trend. So there's more spectrum opening up, which tells you that the trend is that wireless connectivity across the board, whether it's cameras, devices, etc., is on the rise, and the regulatory bodies are recognizing it, right? In one hand, it's cellular companies asking for more, and then the other hand, it's the devices and cameras and etc. asking for more. What I don't see, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to add the last piece is that, we as a company, and this is not a product pitch by any means, but we're positioning things as you need the purpose-built wireless that you connect cameras to. There are companies that are dabbling, right? They're dabbling in putting Wi-Fi chipsets inside the camera. That is being dominated by the DIY industry, whether it's a Nest or a Ring doorbell camera. But I just don't get excited about that space for enterprise commercial application, because there it just won't work well. My Ring camera is on a concrete wall. My Wi-Fi is inside the house, and it's always a weak signal. Now I've got to come up and jury-rig some other solution to keep that. But that's kind of where we are. Sorry, Tony, you had a question.
I was going to ask about the regulatory side of it.
Yeah.
In terms of what is the process for how spectrum gets managed across different countries right now? I mean, you guys work in the space.
Oh wow, yeah, it's a convoluted process at best, right? So first and foremost, I think FCC in North America is probably the leader in terms of ensuring that things are done properly, right? So you've got your unlicensed spectrum, which is what we are playing in today. But within that unlicensed spectrum, you have rules and regulations, such as EIRP, the maximum power plus antenna gain that you're not allowed to exceed. You have DFS, radar detection, and chunks of the band that says don't do that. So there's lots of good rules and regulations. You have 3.5 CBRS, Citizen Band Radio Spectrum, which if you're not familiar with, that opened up a whole world of opportunities for a lot of people in rural broadband. So there's good regulation there. European Union does a really good job. As you look at the rest of the world, there's different bodies and entities that they're just catching up, and they just don't have the good systems in place to put rules and regulations, which sometimes works to an advantage, but in other cases, it's a big disadvantage because some people are just treating wireless as the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, I was going to give you a question. If you're an integrator, though, if you buy cnVision,
Right.
The regulatory side is not really something you have to worry about because you guys are handling
Absolutely
that?
not. Absolutely not. You'll notice in the companion tool when I showed it, there was a drop-down menu that says country code.
Yeah.
So you can say which country you're in. And in fact, when you're in North America, what you buy, what you will only be able to buy is what we call the FCC locked SKU, which means everything that you're doing is within the FCC guidelines. You don't have to worry about getting a nasty letter from the FCC saying you're violating such and such. You saw that our background comes from Motorola too, right? So we're a company that pays a lot of attention to this area, and everything is very kosher.
Yeah, we had a wireless. I think it was AT&T. Somebody come by our office and tell us that one of our cameras was messing up their network, and they brought a guy out with a monitoring device and had to go through our entire office, and we got like hundreds of cameras on the walls. Wow. And he ended up finding a PTZ camera that had a power source that was putting out RF spectrum that was messing up AT.
Okay, so it was a mission out of a power supply. Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, I was just curious because that's not really a field you have to worry about until somebody comes knocking on your door and telling you you're messing something up, all right?
Yeah, and Tony, that's a really valid point because I this is a plug for ourselves because when I go spend thousands of dollars in a lab testing the out-of-band emissions, where am I spewing? Where am I not supposed to spew and get that certificate? And then have software that makes sure everything is compliant. It's a value. And just like you said, until this becomes an issue and not to name names, but I've got Chinese vendors that will throw some Wi-Fi gear out there or Wi-Fi based products that are doing all sorts of stuff they shouldn't be doing. And so you can go with the absolute cheap bottom of the pile and get bit by things like that.
The other question I had was regarding like transportation solutions. You mentioned it earlier. I mean, do you see your products being used a lot in like busing or in like trains where you've got like the need to kind of sync up videos? You've got offline video footage while they're kind of moving around the city, and then when they come back into like a
that really falls in the mobility spectrum, right? Because we're moving at different speeds. So we are not a mobile solution. In that situation where you're talking fast-moving vehicles, your cellular networks are your best bet because the protocols are designed from minute one to handle mobility.
Well, I was speaking more of like we have some customers in like Taiwan, for example, that have the bus solution, and their goal is basically to record on board when they're out and about, and then when they pull back into the station. They get like a signal that says, "Oh, we're in Wi-Fi range again. We're linked up." So as they're kind of approaching the central depot,
they start uploading all that video.
Then they'll upload all that video footage that they've had while they're out, while they're kind of gassing up again, getting ready to go out on their next.
Gotcha. So that linkage that you talked about as they get close to the bus depot is where we would come in, right? So if they're doing another solution today, but that's where we would.
Gotcha. So it's something that you guys could play in, but you haven't seen much demand for so far. Okay.
Absolutely. So that's an interesting idea as well.
All right. Well, I mean, if there are no more questions, I think we're pretty much done. So you could, did you have your contact information on this?
I probably didn't, but let me just
just add it real fast.
Yeah.
So these guys can get in contact if they have any questions for you or they want to look into.
I guess let me just start open a. I think this was just a. Somehow I think it was locked, but let's just do this here. Sakit.Ahmed. Sorry, that's this right. And you can send this out in your follow-on as well, Tony.
Yeah, we're gonna upload the video and the presentation. It'll be
Exactly,
available
yeah.
for everybody offline.
Yep, it's sakid.ahmed@cambiumnetworks.com, and you can even go to our website and there's a pop-up that says contact sales, and we will get the information for sure. But I really enjoyed presenting, Tony. Thank you very much for facilitating, because I think the Q&A was fun, just talking through some stuff and industry trends, and I hope our audience enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on this morning on
Absolutely.
Monday for our little Works with the Next webinar week. For those of you guys that are on, we've got 4 or 5 more this week. So feel free to jump on to our upcoming ones. You can find them on our website, networkoptix.com, under events. You can see all the different presentations coming up. And Sakid, thank you very much.
Yep.
And everybody that jumped on to attend, we appreciate your time this morning. And hope you guys have a good week and stay safe out there.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Sakid. Thanks, everybody.